we interview artists and writers and people, community leaders, and all kinds of folks. We do a live show at Under the Radar Brewery every third Thursday of the month, and then we do little intimate, long interview style shows from my studio. If you trust me to spend an hour with me in my studio by yourself, then I will interview you for about 45 minutes.
That could be fun.
Yes.
That could be fun.
Well, hi, my name is Jonathan Fleissner. I work with Francois on Radar Talks, as you mentioned. That is every third Thursday at 6 p.m. of the month. I also am the ghost in the machine, as I like to call myself, at Under the Radar. I do everything from event coordination to picking up trash in the yard. But I also run a food truck in town called the Deutscher Fleischwagen. It's a German-style food truck. If you have a chance to come try it, you should. We're parked typically at Under the Radar Brewery every day. Also, I'm a musician, so I have a band called Tender Gents. You can look it up on tendergents.bandcamp.com. It's a band based out of San Francisco. It's kind of a surf rock blues style band.
Very cool.
All right, I'm Paul Compton. I'm with JLA Realty. I'm actually going to be opening JLA's newest office in Spring, Texas. Other than that, I do a little bit of real estate investment, thank you. And my wife and I own a hair salon called Epic Look Salon in Atascocita.
Very cool. Yeah, real estate represented in the house today.
There's an imbalance in professions here.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I try to balance the panel. You never know what happens, right?
Well, you know, we can always join forces too. You don't have to look at it as a, you know, as a negative. And he's on one side of town. He's able to service people on one side that's very far from me, and I'm on another side.
She's pointing that out, right?
know.
Very far from me.
No,
Practically another country.
we
if you
will
would.
save that topic for another day. But honestly, I think that people in a lot of you know, different professions should come together and
I do
start
too.
fighting.
The
Kinda
pie
like
is
this
big
show.
enough, I believe.
I agree.
Yeah.
So we have a fun topic, guys. As we mentioned, the topic for today is the public education system and what the heck are we going to do to fix it, right? I think we can all agree that there's some issues going on, and we want to know what we can do to improve that. So at this point, I always go to the left again here on my panel to give a bullet point, 1 minute kind of a thing. Where are you at? What's your thoughts on this? And just synopsis, thesis statement, right? Where are you at? Public education. What do we need to do to fix it? Go.
I feel that public education, I wish there was a one solution fits all. But I'm very much for we need to get rid of corruption out of our political system that weighs heavily on our public education. We need to stop tying the hands of our awesome educators that are motivating and culturing our students. We need to stop worrying about, you know, these productivity numbers and no one can fail, or, you know, nobody in our school can have anything that might cause a negative viewpoint until it reaches the news. And I think that we need to revamp the current curriculum that we're teaching. It's become more of a hindrance than a help when you've got rocket scientists and parents with, you know, numerous degrees or numerous years of college that can't even solve a first or fifth grade question that comes home on a math or reading or writing project. So.
Okay. Francois?
Well, I mean, overall, my main bullet point is that one size does not fit all. We have probably millions of students in our country, and we just can't have one solution to go across the board. And also, our teachers. I mean, we put so much. My sister's an art teacher, and I went to visit her. She leaves home at 7 a.m. and she comes back home at 7 p.m. and then she grades tests till 9 p.m. and she does that several days a week for not even more money than I make, and I'm a bartender for a living. You know, and so it's just, I think that's nuts. And the amount of testing, the amount of forms, the amount of craziness. Let's trust our teachers to teach, and then let's stop going for the lowest common denominator. And, you know, when there is an issue, you take care of that one issue in that one environment. Once again, there's not, one size does not fit all. You know, every situation is different. So that's my opinion.
Jonathan?
Oh, I think one of the big problems is that there's just too much emphasis on being in the classroom. I don't know. I was always a big fan of Thoreau, and and Walden, and I liked his approach to teaching. We're getting you out of the classroom.
Yes.
You know, and the social experiment of interacting with the world and with other people, not just a curriculum that's manufactured for everyone, the same, you know, the same one-size-fit-all curriculum. I think that, you know, we could adjust our education system with maybe more vocational schooling or whatever it would be, but there's definite ways I think we could improve it by just offering alternatives to what is, I guess, contemporary standardized testing and et cetera.
I will flex my geeky English major moment here and say, with you on Thoreau, I've come to the woods deliberately to live, to suck the marrow from life, and not to come to find that when it is my time to die, that I have not lived at all.
Right.
Yay, Thoreau.
Yeah.
Paul.
So I have a bit of a unique perspective, I guess, because before real estate, I spent 8 years in the classroom at the secondary level. So, you know, had quite a few experiences, some very good, some not so great. But I think my experience is that, you know, teachers, and a couple of you already said, their hands oftentimes are kind of tied behind their back. You know, my biggest issue, I guess, is that I feel like a lot of times as a teacher, and you know, it's probably terrible to say this, but you're not allowed to fail someone, and that's just not life. You know, it's gotten to the point where certain times where kids, you know, they would sleep through class, and you try to wake them up, try to get them to do some work, and they'd just be like, you know, I don't care if I fail because I can just take this in credit recovery. You know, I'll just take it in the summer or whatever. So they just keep kicking it down the road, and then sure enough, even though that kid who, you know, basically did nothing for an entire semester, you know, you'd see them walking across the stage and graduating at the end of the year. So. To me, there's got to be some accountability like real life. There's got to be some real life consequences because I feel like you're setting kids up to fail if you don't teach them that up front.
Interesting. Okay. Now, I want to pose a question to you guys, and this has actually been a kind of a reoccurring theme for me for the last few weeks. I think a lot of onus comes back to parenting, right? And on last night's show, we talked about suicide in America. Like, suicide has skyrocketed in the last decade, right? 30% increase, right? Which is substantial, right? And it's kind of bell curving, it's spiking, right? And we discussed the causes. For me, a lot of this goes back to, you know, absentee dad in the home, single mom, you know, killing herself to try to keep the house going, that type of thing. For me, I look at America and we've really downplayed the family. We've really, and for that matter, even as a dad, I mean, my poor wife, every time a commercial comes on, I'm complaining. I'm like, there's another idiot dad. It's like every commercial, every sitcom has the idiot dad who couldn't tie his own shoestrings if it wasn't for the mom who was, you know, super mom running the whole show. And my wife's response is, well, you know, we're just catching up for, you know, the prior 50 years where the women were the idiots. You know? I'm like, how about this idea? Those are all terrible, right? Like, the mom is a superhero, the dad is a superhero. Both of them really are needed to make a great family, and this is not a slight against one or the other. To me, a mom isn't a dad isn't a mom, right? And so now we have more than ever, in any period in history of America, more single parents. I think the stat was 41% of all kids in schools are being raised by a single parent. That is mind-blowing to me, right? And so I think there's very little parent involvement. And as a teacher, maybe you can give me some insight on this, but I wanted to kind of toss that question out to you guys to consider with all of the angles of what y'all brought up. What do you think about that angle of it? How much of it comes back to parents in dealing with each of the points that you mentioned?
So
No, go
ahead.
ahead.
No, you after you, son.
Please.
All I was gonna say is I don't know if this is exactly what you're asking now, but I have two sisters who teach high school. One of them teaches French and mathematics, and every other year she takes a group of students to Quebec to live with some French-speaking families. And I was asking her, how is it? How do you take these 20-something kids and you know, that must be mind-bogglingly difficult. I don't even want to take a 15-year-old out to another country. That's crazy. He says, actually, the biggest problem is the parents. It's not the kids. The kids are awesome. So, you know, to throw that back at you is a lot of the times, you you know, and I've heard that from both my sisters.
This is the generation of the hovering parent.
Right, and well, not just that, also the parents who's not there at all.
Oh, yeah,
It's
sure.
one or the other, and they're having an issue with the kid, and they're called a kid conference or whatever it's called, and then all of a sudden they're having to deal with the parents, and they're seeing that the parents is really part of the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I didn't
No.
answer any questions. I just put something on the table.
So-
I just figured I'd make the problem worse.
Right. There we go. That's all right. That's all
So
right.
I wanted to talk about what you mentioned, but just to reply to or respond to what you said. I was in high school and I was a member of the Habitat for Humanity. We actually
Wow.
went to Mexico, and we were
Great
well, it was great, except we got down there, and I won't go into specifics, but we worked all day long. We were actually like making gardens and stuff, which I found kind of frivolous work when they needed houses and electric and plumbing. But anyway, you know, we were out there working all day, and a lot of the students were 18. They were the parent guardians that we had there. But, you know, we were 18 and we were in Mexico. So after a hard day's worth of work, yeah, we wanted some cerveza, you know. And then a couple of the parents were okay with it, but then there was like the one parent that was like, no, you know what I mean? You can't do that. You're not 21. It's like, well, we're not in America right now. You know what I mean?
Right.
Was my excuse, and I think I'm correct on that. But anyway, I know I wasn't in America.
Well, we had another show about should the drinking age be legal or lowered, and consensus was 18, by the way. So you know. Yeah.
But what I wanted to say about what you mentioned was, all right. So I have two questions. One, you said the
It's like
41.
the first show where I've had like multiple guests taking notes. I almost feel unprepared right now. So.
So you said 41% is the statistic for
If I
single
remember
parents right
correctly, yeah.
now
Yes,
in America.
right now, kids in school.
Did you compare that to other countries in the world? Because I'm wondering
Yeah.
if that is something like, do we have that many more single parents than other countries? Is that why our education system, you know, because I think parents' involvement in their children's education is probably pivotal.
That's a great question.
I think it probably is
Absolutely.
pivotal, like making sure that
Absolutely.
they do their homework, making sure that they, you know, are actually not just screwing off.
I would think that it would be culturally driven. I would think that there are certain cultures where marriage is way more of an institution than others. But what would be interesting to follow up on that is to see if the statistic follows.
Right. See if it fits.
Right. I don't think, well, as I don't know who mentioned it, I don't think there's a single point or a single issue that's going to be the thing,
Mhm.
right? I think that a strong family unit is the basis for a lot of things going right, but you can have two parents that just suck as human beings
Yeah.
and jack the kid up more than a single parent that's
Right.
really on the game, right? So I mean, it's not like you can generalize it across the board. But I'm like, at the end of the day, if you have a mom who's involved and a dad who's involved, they're involved with their kids' education, they're paying attention to homework and everything else. I think, generally speaking, this is a generalization, that kid's going to be doing a lot better academically than the kid who doesn't have parents that are plugged in. So anyway, I mean, it's a great question, by the way, and now I'm curious, and I will be, researching. If Ashley Bradley was online, like, you need to ping her. I haven't seen if she's online yet. We're going to go to the comment feed here in a minute. But we have a regular guest that tunes in from up in Illinois.
Yeah.
Holy cow! I almost said Idaho, Illinois,
Close enough.
and she Googles stuff for me every time I have one of these kind of questions. She starts doing research for us. But that's definitely a good question. See if there's a commonality between other countries. So,
Well, I've been dying to chime in.
take it away.
In a way, I do believe that two parents can make a difference in a lot of cases. But the more I thought about that, that's always been the first thing that would come out of my mouth.
Mhm.
Hey, it's better when you have two. But I just thought about it as we were sitting here and talking. I grew up with two parents. My mom was in the military. She spent 40 years in the military. And of course, the encyclopedia was the greatest thing she ever purchased for us, so I had to read that every night. And I had a
I love the
stepdad.
encyclopedia.
I had a
I was a
stepdad
total nerd
that
for
wasn't that wonderful of a parent. So for me, it was important for me to study and stay out of the house so that I didn't have to tend to this person. But I think for me, naturally, I am driven. I'm very driven. And I have some siblings. I mean, I'm the oldest of 8 between marriages. So there were 4 in my house growing up. And then there's 4 at my dad and my stepmom's house. And each one of us is different, whether they've had 2 parents or not. Some are, their personality is, you know, the heck with it, I'm not gonna bother. I'm gonna sleep during class, but we also don't know what's going on at home that's making them sleep at class or not care. And they have no parent, one parent, two parents. And so the more I thought about it, my parents had very little input other than if your grades weren't all A's and B's on your report card and the majority of A's, you'll be beat. So for me, that was incredible motivation to get through school and get the heck out of the house.
So you're saying bring back beatings?
You know,
we just flog the lowest performing student in the classroom, and then that fixes everything.
Define beating. Because I do believe where it says spare the rod, spoil the child.
Yeah, absolutely.
I do believe in some form of corporal punishment in my home that's not considered worthy of calling CPS.
I think the option should be on the table. That's how I feel.
So I think that there's a number of things that play in that.
I think what's even more important, and just taking some of the things that you said and what you said, what's even more important than a two-parent family is a strong community, whether it be familial or, you know, aunts and uncles, grandparents and such, or whether it be the church or the neighborhood. And in many ways, again, like just talking from my own personal experience, I moved to this country when I was 10, and then I moved back to the country where I'm from in my 20s. And I found, growing up in America, what was missing a lot, and that's, it might have been just because I'm an immigrant and I didn't speak the language, is I was missing the community outside of my direct nuclear family. And that was really hard for me growing up in a different country. And I think that's one of the things that we should focus on, because we are going to have single parent families. That's just part of it. Mm-hmm. That's just not going to go away. And even if you come from
unless we bring back beatings,
right? And and we should, we might should do that. But
I'm playing. I'm like the CPS is going to be investigating me now. You know, like that.
Even if you have a mom and a dad, a lot of the times you, as the kid, you need to reach out and talk to somebody. Sure. And you don't necessarily want to talk to these people. I don't know. I think in many ways it's the education, but it's also the community that we need to work on.
Yeah, and for me, I'm like, you have an ideal, right? And then there's alternate ideals. So for me, I'm like, the ideal is a mom and dad, they're both involved in the kid's life. That's the ideal. From there, then it starts stemming, okay, well, if I don't have that, if I have a single mom, what do you do? Well, it's not like you can't find father figure roles in your community through church or through Boy Scouts or through martial arts or whatever. I mean, there's an infinite number of things where you can bring role models in that play that role and that will stand in and step up. I mean, I saw a video on Facebook that was just beautiful to me. An African-American church pastor said he wanted to honor dads and the relationship they have with their children, trying to solve that problem, the single dad, or single parent thing, the dad being checked out and gone, right? Mm-hmm. And so he held this thing at the school and worked it out with the school where he could do it, and they were going to have a dad, daughter, dad, son day, a dad day, right, with the kids. And he wanted to make sure that every kid had a father figure represented, right? So he put it out to the community and said, you know, anybody that would like to step up and stand in and be a dad figure for this person, you know, for this day, just so that they have someone present there with them, that type of thing, show up. Well, they crashed the website. They had over 600 guys show up for this.
I saw the link you posted. Yeah.
It was beautiful. I mean, it was beautiful, and I was got all emotional watching everything, and people were talking about, I didn't have a dad growing up, but this, I had a mentor in my life, and and I wanted to give back, and I'm getting emotional. I'm telling the story again. But it was just beautiful to me. I'm like, that's fixing societal issues. It's
right.
You're gonna have the single mom. That's gonna happen. I agree. It's gonna happen, right? So what do we do as a society to address it? And I was like, I saw that thing. I was like, that's a good angle. Do that, And there's a bunch of those out there. And our other topic where we were talking about, which you guys didn't get to see, is media killing or destroying, civil discussion, that type of thing. We were going to talk about that. I'm like, the media should be sharing this stuff. That's where I'm like, let's get this information out there instead of that crap that's like just so negative and drawing us down. But anyway, that's another subject. I want to hop to the comment feed real quick and ask if we can pull up some of the comments for today, and let's see what our guests are saying here. And make that big because I'm blind. If you can enlarge it a little bit. There you go. That's good. That's right. All right. Brandon said, if you're, it's moving now. If you're concerned about the hours of teachers, don't look into the hours of scientific researchers. All universities for the amount of pay. So scientific researchers, he's saying, is hours probably suck, I'm guessing is what you're getting at. Massive hours. Marissa, thanks for tuning in. Jeff, thanks for tuning in. Esther saying, hey, she's here. Esther, where are y'all at? Steve's not even on the show. I thought he said y'all were going to be out of town. So Steve is a regular on the show, and Esther's his wife. She always tunes in to keep him in line. Lauren, thanks for tuning in. Haven't seen you in a while. Randall, thanks for hopping on. Ruth, Chris, Katarznia. I love her name. I call her Kat because, that's just like way easier, but I still love the name. DK, I know you got some thoughts on this, man. This guy's a pastor. He does his wife is hilarious. I mean, like, she gives him so much grief. It's beautiful. I tune in just to watch for that, just because she's giving him a hard time. Danny, thanks for tuning in. DeAndre, thanks for tuning in. Freddie Gorgeous, what's going on, man? Ed Camp, regular on the show. He's been on a few times. Andrea, thanks for tuning in. She's tuning in for you. She's giving you a shout out there.
She's awesome. She's an awesome teacher.
Very cool. Oh,
she's very inspiring.
She's a teacher.
She's a teacher.
Chime in with your thoughts on this. You got to have some. Oh, she did. There we go.
She did.
There we go. We're getting to it.
She's not afraid to give her opinion.
We're getting to it. All right, Amy, thanks for tuning in. Andrea, I'm sorry if I'm saying it wrong. Secretaries for teachers to help with paperwork. Yep, that would probably be a good thing. Paul Pablo. Oh my God, Paul. I said Paul. Pablo, thanks for tuning in. Andrea said teachers should be held in higher status in the community. We are the stepping stone. This is how blind I am. We're a stepping stone for every career. Don't talk down to teachers. Thank you, my daughter, who just made it even bigger on the screen. Yes. Okay. So we got a couple of good points that she's talking about. Secretaries. I want to come back to that comment how we have
secretaries. That's what TAs are.
TAs, teachers' assistants. there you go. Donna, thanks for tuning in. Arlene, thanks for tuning in. Jeffrey Bonnie, hey man, what's going on, buddy? I know you got some thoughts on this subject. Share your thoughts. Kwame, this kid is like 25, 24, I think. 25. He just got accepted to a PhD program for neuroscience. He's been on the show a few times. Super smart cat and just cool as they can become. So anyway, really cool guy. Michael Mackenberg, thanks for tuning in. Denise, thanks for tuning in. Is that everybody? I caught him off guard. Yes, I think we got everybody. Okay, so teachers in higher regard, and I don't know if somebody mentioned pay at one point. Oh, it was hours.
Mm-hmm.
Hours of work. I want to kind of touch on that a little bit, and then the idea of the teacher's assistant, right? I taught theology at a private school for 5 years. They had one principal, one assistant principal, and that was then as far as their top end administrative staff, right? And then they had an office assistant and an office manager, right? That was the entire group for administration, right? If you look at administration per student, private schools versus public schools, it is flip-flop. It is super high end. There's like, I forgot, 14 students per administrator in public schools. And I'm butchering that. Somebody can probably correct me on this. It's been forever since I've looked this stat up. And it was like a half to a third of that in private schools, right? Far fewer administrators. The most expensive people, the six-figure people, right, are far greater in our public school education systems versus private. And then the number of students per teacher, public schools flip-flop again.
Right.
You have 32 on average in a public school versus 14 to 16 in a private school, right? So when it comes to problem, I want to get your thoughts on that, and then that goes to like, how do we make the teachers more effective? If we're eliminating or reducing administrative staff, does that free up money that we can pay towards teachers? Does that free up money that we can spend on more TAs to take off the administrative tasks from the teachers, to improve them. Share your thoughts with that, and you guys as well comment, because we're trying to say, what do we do to fix the problem? It's not just complain about, you know, what's going on. What do we think the issues are? What can we do to make the system better? Because, you know, we all vote, right? And if we can come up with solutions, then we can hold our politicians accountable. What a novel idea. That's a whole nother show. Anyway, run with it. Who wants to jump in?
I have a question for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
You've been quiet over there, so
Yeah, I have a question for you,
Just
actually.
wait my
so,
turn.
because, I mean, so you worked in public school system.
Yes.
And I guess I remember from public school, like there's department heads, basically, like your assistant principals or whatever.
Yeah.
And they kind of, that's why you have so many different administrators, is because they kind of section out the school into different department heads, right?
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
So how many like teachers would be under like a department head or AP or principal or?
So I worked at 4 different high schools, and you know I used to teach world history and U.S. history. So I would say, you know, our department meetings we'd have maybe, depending on the school, 12 to 20 in the history department, with 1 AP over that in a normal meeting.
And that was for every kind of core class?
So every content would probably have about the same, just depending on the school and the size of the school and whatnot, the size of the faculty.
Where did you teach? Here in Texas?
Yes. Started in Hoffman, Humble High School, and then Clearbrook High School.
Because I went to school in West Texas, and all of our history teachers were the coaches.
Right.
Okay.
Mine
So-
too.
Well,
Yeah, mine too.
History class was open the book, chapter 5, read it, do the questions at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That was
well,
history class.
So
Wow.
I was a coach as well, so yeah, golf coach.
There you go.
Yeah, my teachers would sit there and do like fantasy football.
I'm happy to say I was not that
That's
guy,
freaking
though.
hilarious.
It's like wonderful.
So on
Unplanned
that
moments on the
point,
show.
being that you've taught at several high schools here,
Yes.
since you have already had that experience, what is something that you see being an insider that could boost the pay of teachers? Because y'all, I don't know of a single teacher that gets paid well.
What
for
could make
they
it
do.
actually happen?
Mhm.
Well, you said we all vote, right? Ultimately, you're a public employee at that point, so it's going to come down to politicians. But and there's no doubt in my mind that teachers, you know, they're vastly underpaid, and I think, you know, if you want to get the best individuals for the job, you know, in a capitalist economy, you got to pay for it, right? So if you pay them more, you're going to get better and brighter minds, I think, to come to teach. So I guess that's the first step, but that was.
What about cutting administrators, though, like I guess we talked about? Because, I mean, if private schools they pay teachers more, I assume, for some of these top-tier private schools. Like you
Depends
said,
on the
they're
school,
good, they're
yeah.
good. Well, but
Yeah.
if you want the best and the brightest, right, you have to offer them a monetary incentive. So you think there's room to cut administrators, and that would help pay teachers more?
Yeah, probably not a popular opinion, you know, being here in Texas, and I love my football. I love football. But I mean, you know, Katie just opened a stadium that costs, what, like $74 million or something like that?
That's crazy.
I mean, and like I said, I love football, but you got to start, you know, I don't know.
Yeah,
Priorities.
What are we setting these kids up for, you know, in the
What's more
future?
important, math and science or football?
Well, and I think the rest of the world has made the priorities pretty clear, you know,
Yeah.
and that's why we're falling behind. You look at Asian cultures, I mean, you know, they do play sports, but, you know, it's more specialized, and, you know, they take their
I mean,
very
if
seriously.
you look at Hollywood, if you look at, I mean, we've kind of communicated very clearly to our youth what is of value in America, and it's entertainment. We want to be entertained, right? Americans tune in on average for 5 hours a night to TV, right? Do you think that's the same in the Asian cultures you mentioned?
No, absolutely not.
Right? No,
So my sister-in-law
I agree.
she was born in Seoul, South Korea, so she immigrated here when she was like 5 or 6, but, you know, she still has family there, and it's, you know, it's extremely different, the priorities, and the time that, you know, like second graders spend probably 12 hours, you know, in school or studying per day, and it's just the way it is, you know.
I find it kind of just horrible that we can drop $74 million on one school's football facility that isn't even used all year. It's used for certain games, you know what I mean? And we can't afford to pay teachers. And the thing is like, if you look up the statistics of how many high school athletes will make it to professional athletes, it's like less than 1%.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's like, or even Division I, where they get their education paid for.
I mean,
at the next level.
it's, to me, I don't understand it. I can't understand when we're talking about budget and there's not room for, you know, new books or paying teachers more, or, you know, if they need metal detectors or whatever it is, but you can afford $74 million in a football stadium.
Because nobody questions, at least in Texas, when it comes to football. I mean, my sisters worked at a high school
It is pretty psycho.
where they needed more English teachers, but they decided to hire football coaches because their budget only allowed them to hire one teacher, and it was a really small school in a very small community. You know, it's like a 1A high school, you know, where whatever, tiny. And they went with spending money on football rather than spending money on math or English or science.
So why is that? But why are we spending $74 million on a stadium?
I don't know any of the budget stuff, but I mean, high school football ticket prices are probably what, like $5 a game, I imagine, something like that.
Yeah, it's basically
Between
or
5 and
free.
10.
Or
Yeah,
free.
if you
So how do you ever pay back $74 million that way? Like, I don't.
Well, in Fort Bend ISD, which is where I live,
Taxes.
you have to
Yeah.
pay. You have to pay for your tickets. I have a daughter that's already graduated, and then I have 2 younger ones. So you definitely pay for your ticket. We do a lot of sponsoring. We do a lot of sponsorships. You know, the scoreboards. Somebody's always sponsoring those, or different wings around the stadium. So there is different avenues for money. We also have a lot of athletes where we live, and their children are beyond amazing. But not only athletes, we have just incredible talent where we live. So I would never want to get rid of athletics, but I think we need to find a better way to spread the funds. The other thing is I see athletes around us retiring, or friends that I have when they retired and they've got 5 or 6 kids. All of a sudden that money's gone, or they have an injury during football or basketball, or all of a sudden they lost their mojo, and they're switched from team to team to team, and they've got to move and move and move. If we focus more on their education, then they're not sitting there frantic, oh, okay, I haven't seen that degree in 20 years, or, okay, did I even get a degree? Now I've got to go back, or, you know, they're able to plug and play and get back into a real world setting because they did get a good education along the way. The other thing that I have to shout out about where we live is a lot of the incredible talent are also known for their academics.
Mm-hmm.
But how do we figure out how to not spend 74 grand?
74
million.
I mean, 74 million,
Yeah.
74 grand. 74
day.
grand was the part of the row of seats. But,
Yeah.
you know, a lot of teachers should be paid at least 6 figures. The amount of work they do, I'm not willing to teach a class of 22, 24 kindergartners, 1st graders, 2nd grade, 3rd, 4th, 5th. So maybe if we paid our teachers better, especially the good ones, Andrea, who was phenomenal with my daughter, who nearly died during 2nd grade and still kept her up to speed. She still pretty much had all A's, maybe a couple B's during the year. And she was a huge support, which really gave, you know, that inspiration to my daughter, who didn't realize she was that sick. And she still taught an incredible class of kids. How do we motivate them, pay them more, and just kind of even out the funds? So I guess the reason why I was asking, hey, as an insider, is there any fluff that you see that maybe we should get rid of?
Besides athletics?
Besides athletics.
And so let me
How
clarify
about a
too, 'cause-
$7.4 million stadium instead of $74 million stadium?
And I should clarify too, because I mean, I played not college. I wish I would play college football. I played high school football, high school baseball. I think athletics are so important for a kid's development. You learn things like, you know, how to be competitive, all these things that you can take to the business world. You know, you learn how to fail and come back, and you know, and all those things you need to learn.
How to be disciplined.
Exactly, how to be disciplined.
I mean, I definitely agree.
Work
I
as a
definitely think
team.
sports teaches more real life, you know,
And
lessons
I say
than we presently
need
have in a
more
lot
real
of them.
world things in our
Yeah.
schools, such as, you know, sports or
Yeah.
things like that. But
I'm not against sports.
fluff. It's a tough question. There's no easy answer for that.
But this is a great talking point, I think, because I love sports too. I play sports, I watch sports all the time, you know? But I live in Pearland, big growing city, huge. There's 3 brand new football stadiums within 15 miles of each other that are all the same school district, okay? It's all Alvin ISD, I think. So why can't they share one? You know, the Lakers and the Clippers share a stadium, and they're a professional basketball team. I think it's called the Staples Center.
It
So,
is.
so why if a professional team that has a much higher a population that are watching the games and going to the games can share a stadium, why can't high school teams
I should jump
share
in. I
stadiums?
should probably clarify the $74 million comment, because I do believe that all of KDISD uses that stadium. And like Humboldt ISD, they all use Turner Stadium now, which is they spent a few $1 million on that. So they have kind of gone to that model actually,
Okay.
which
That's
does
good.
make more sense.
Okay.
It does make
Yeah.
more sense. And they get like a nice, turf field with big, big
Sure.
stands and whatnot. So
Sure. And I know in Texas, so we're in Texas, man. Friday Night Lights and all that. I know we love football, but
And I mean, hey, if you get enough corporate sponsorship on the fields and all that sort of thing, and you turn it into a revenue stream, that's one thing.
That's true.
But on 74 million, you're going to have to turn that into a revenue stream for a long time to make it worthwhile. I look at the day in and day out operations, and I'm a big fan of what works. I don't care why it works or what the mechanics. I'm like, I can look around the world and see who's performing, who's getting results, where are the kids doing best, etc. I think we have a 400-year-old means of teaching that's basically built off of rote memorization, which is, to your very first comment, that one size doesn't fit all. We know enough about human psychology now to know that there's different learning styles. There's kinesthetic, there's auditory, there's all these. Some kids learn better by touch, some kids learn better by hearing, some kids learn better by seeing, all these different things. You mentioned a country where they go outside and they play, Japan, right?
Mhm.
It was, and I want to say it was in like Norway or Denmark or something, but part of their curriculum for biology was to actually go outside and learn biology via nature. So they're climbing in trees and
the Thoreau way.
and doing stuff, and like, oh, here's a bug crawling around, and so what kind of bug is that? Let's talk about this bug, is that an insect? What is that, and the life itself was part of the lesson. I think we, with standardized testing,
Well, I think that's the big thing. I'm sorry to cut
No,
off, but
go right ahead.
standardized testing is, just talking again, I can only, both my sisters teach, standardized testing. They spend so much time in the school year to get ready for a test that they can't concentrate on each student and take each student, and first of all, their class is huge, and then, doing the testing all year long, all these different tests, it's just way too much time.
I definitely think we end up teaching to the test. I think, we as parents, as society, as I'm involved in the financial sector, financial services industry, and the average knowledge level of just basic finance type stuff is just abysmal, right? Very practical day in and day out life kind of stuff. Well, I mean, we could teach math and we could teach a lot of things by just engaging real life, right? To make functional human beings that we're just, better at life, right? We can teach English and psychology and a number of other courses, again, by life and human interaction and this sort of. I think we could really improve by making our education practical. I think as humans, many people are more motivated to learn when they actually have something they're trying to solve in their own life, right?
I mean, right now, all we're
Standardized tests is like, the only thing that's practical about that is a grade, and I'm just trying to get through it,
I mean, I think right now all we're producing is consumers. We're teaching kids to
That's
get out of
very
school, to want that nice car, to want the nice house, to want all the toys, all the electronic toys, to go eat at all the fast foods. I mean, basically we're creating consumers right now. We're not creating people who think for themselves. And a few of them get out of it and are able to think for themselves, but.
A question for
That's
you,
a heavy
Paul.
thought.
Yeah.
Right, before we dive in, I want to hop to the comment feed again real quick and see if we had some more comments here to address. As my daughter is throwing stuff up. David Craig, what is going on? We'll start at the top and scroll down, Ash. So we'll see how it goes. David Craig, he's been on the show a couple times. We should use school vouchers to allow parents to decide which school to send their child to, whether private or public. Fund the schools more than have good performance, and close the ones that are doing bad. In essence, get rid of bad teachers and bad schools. David, you and I always disagree on practically everything, and yet this is one of the first comments that I 1000% agree with. I'm a big fan of competition, and I don't even know why I didn't think about that in relation to public education, so I definitely want to dive into that in a second here. Andrea said, tech is getting in the way of human interaction. That's for sure. Gonna make me cry. That statement is my motivation. I think she was talking about when you were giving her shout outs about taking care of the kids there. Alex said, what about redirecting funding for new tech to prepare the youth for a future in the real world? So again, this kind of gets back to practical education. Andrew said, anyone know the percentage of how much is donation money to build a stadium? It's a good question. I don't know. I don't know that answer. Challenge, ways to make teaching more appealing for those entering college without increasing pay. Go. Yeah, don't get me started on college. I have a lot to say about college stuff. It's a racket.
We're going to have next Friday, the following Friday.
Right?
These are future comments for sure.
Right? So a bunch of people tuning in. Thanks for everybody for hopping in. Okay, so on David's comment, I definitely wanted to dive into this a little bit. How do you guys feel about the school vouchers and competition in schools? What are your thoughts?
I'll start. I mean, I think it sounds great in practice, and I'm a big believer in a capitalist society, competition, and all that. But my question becomes like, how does that work out practically? Whenever let's imagine you got an inner city school, for example, that's struggling. So the vouchers take all those kids out. The school closes down. Well, then I guess at some point, those other schools are going to get overcrowded. I mean, it's just like, is the next school over that's doing well, does it have room for 3,000 kids to just show up because they got a school voucher? I mean, how do you make that work practically? And maybe, I don't know, maybe someone here has an answer. I don't know.
I don't. I'm curious. I'm of the mind that if you have school vouchers, it's not like I just show up tomorrow, I bail on this school, and I'm like, all right, hey, give me my check, I want to go somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
And so it's going to be
over the course of time.
Yeah, forward looking, right? So if one school's methodology is working, and just I'm kind of talking this through, right? There's a degree of people are going to be migrating over. That school's getting more funding, so they get more capacity to expand and continue what they're doing. That's kind of the weed out the bad, and fund what's working kind of approach. I definitely agree with that. The schools that are losing people, if they actually had to pay attention to client retention, right? Then they've got to notice what their competitors are doing. Their competitors, other schools that are succeeding. So now it's they adjust rather than just start. I think we don't pay attention too much. I mean, I literally quit high school. I was in the top quarter of my class. I quit high school in the last 6 weeks of my senior year. I was making at that time almost $40,000 a year. And I was doing very well in sales, and I was in the distributive education program where I got out half a day. I was in a management training program for Tandy Corporation. As soon as I got out of high school, I was the youngest manager for Radio Shack in Texas, all this kind of stuff. I would show up, and I'd get sent to the office if I didn't shave, or some random idiotic crap, right? But to make this relevant, we had one class and one teacher in particular where every single student in the class was failing, except for the German foreign exchange student. And I'm like, this is a problem. If you don't notice this as a problem as a school, that this is not all the students, right? This is obviously some sort of a teaching issue that's going on. But nobody gave a crap until I showed up to check myself out because I was 18, and I said, see you later. I'm done with this idiotic mess that y'all call school. Then they started trying to talk me out of it, and I'm like, look, the only reason you care now is that I'm going to be an empty seat, and you get so much government funding based on my seat being full. If you actually gave a crap, you would have noticed a long time ago that there was an issue in this class, right? And so, I actually had this conversation with my principal at the high school. I'm like, and I was a young punk, and so, I wasn't going to listen or anything else, And I was making good money too, so, it only complicated the problem. But I checked out. I moved along. I think it's that kind of stuff where going back to David's point, where that's always resonated with me. If the school has to pay attention to client retention, and they actually now lose that funding, that nice, and I'm not talking about just the government check, but it's like the school voucher, that money is pulled from that school, and as a client, they go elsewhere, right? I think you're gonna see more people migrating to private schools where there's just a smaller classroom. I think you're gonna see more people migrating to, you know, schools that are actually working, you know?
Yeah, but
I don't
think-
have all the answers though to your question though,
Yeah, I
because I
think
think
we're
there's some
gonna-
inherent problems there.
I think we'll fall into the problem that you were explaining. Some schools are just gonna lose students, not because they're doing everything wrong, it's just because they're in the wrong neighborhood, in the wrong place.
Well, I'm saying, what do you do about the kid that can't, their parents can't afford to get them to the new school? I mean, are you gonna start busing
Yeah, what
across
do you do
the
with those
entire
kids?
city?
And
Or
their school shuts down?
Yeah, so it's, you know, so I think the idea sounds great, it's just, you know,
It's
how do you
not-
practically make it work?
it's not
That's,
applicable.
it's just,
I-
it's very difficult, you know?
Is there not school voucher programs going on elsewhere in the United States?
There is, and sadly, most
I don't know,
people-
I don't know, I don't know enough about
There
it.
is, and sadly in Texas, and I was all for vouchers, and I still support you should be able to send your child where you want to. That I definitely support. But I found out that, in a town hall meeting for a friend that was running for school board, who's now running for senator, she's really a tell it how it is kind of gal. And I was surprised to hear from the mayor and her and several other people that were more in the know, that we're actually harming our kids more by taking school vouchers, because it doesn't, not all of it actually goes to the school that you're sending them to. And it's also broken us in, whereas we used to all have federal funding, now we've broken it down to state funding. So you're only getting this much for the day, and that's not gonna increase next year and the year after next. If I understood that right, that's what I took from that meeting. And I was like, well, that's really sad, because we pay an enormous amount of taxes, and you can raise taxes, but only the first year of raising taxes for schools does the money actually go to the school. The following year, it goes into some sort of general fund, and if the state decides to hand that back to those schools, which they should, and maybe
Yeah.
we should have another day on a topic of
There's another one, taxes.
lottery money maybe
Snapped.
lottery money maybe going to education, or one day if we have cannabis approved here, that those taxes go towards education. I know states, they have lottery taxes and or cannabis tax monies are going towards the school, which I think is a huge enhancement. I'm all for, you know, some sort of voucher as long as the money is actually going to help. Secondly, they're not gonna approve your voucher if they don't have room. So that's gonna be the other thing, is it's great you wanna send your child to private school. I know we're having to consider it for one of our children, and the tuition is quite high. Thankfully, we have saved college money. That tax-free money can go to pay towards private school now, so that's a help. But we do need to find a way to have some sort of uniformity of the type of education we receive at schools without having some sort of mandated, this is all you're gonna learn this year, teach for the test type of thing. And also read statistically, our kids waste 3 hours a day standing in line. Whether it's going to the lunchroom, going to music, going to art, going to the restroom, going to recess, going wherever, and then the teacher's spending all the time, hey Johnny, you need to sit down. Well, because you didn't sit down, you gotta go to the back of the line. So Johnny throws a fit. You know, so we waste a lot of time like that. How do we get back to school and education as it was when we were younger, I feel, where we learned all semester, you took a test. If you passed the test, and I think every so many years we had to take the Iowa test or some sort of standardized test to make sure you were learning something, but they weren't teaching for
I
a test.
never passed the Iowa test here in Texas.
'Cause you weren't
I was
Iowa?
lousy at the
It was all Iowa history.
Right, yeah, I know exactly. I didn't know anything about Iowa.
I don't know anything about Iowa.
I still don't.
Sorry.
I would totally fail that test.
Yeah. Where is Iowa? That's,
Yeah, it's somewhere in the United States, is it?
yeah, that's north of Dallas,
Yeah.
I think.
Everything's
you're right.
north of Dallas. When you live in Houston.
I do that seriously just to jack with people from other states, right? Any reference of where they're at, I'm like, oh, where are you from? They're like, oh, California. And then I get this quizzical look on my face. I'm like, that's west of El Paso, right? And just, you know, I'm from Chicago. That's north of Dallas, right? Like I know where nothing is outside of Texas. It's all confusing. right? You should try it sometimes just to jack with people because they already have a perception of Texas, you know,
Right.
like Texas is everything. We're the greatest nation on the earth. We just call ourselves a state because we're humble like that. You know, just to not make the other states have envy and feel bad. So, anyway, it's fun. You should try it. So, anyway, extraneous. I mean, we're down to the last couple minutes here. You know, this is a topic where there's just so doggone much to dig into. I'm kind of curious now about the parent connection in other countries. I'm actually going to Google that and check that out. If there's any statistics that will follow that with other countries, that'll be interesting to find out. Competition. I want to look at the voucher thing. My immediate reaction is like, first of all, if I have taxes, property tax that's being taken, and I have to pay school taxes, I sent my kids to private school. I sent my kids to private school when it represented a third of my income, and I drove like a 20-year-old car with no AC, right? So some people have this perception of, you know, oh, rich people send their kids to private school. I'm like, no. We did without a lot to send our kids to private school. You know, I was fortunate that my income caught up, you know, at some point. And then we homeschooled, and they're actually homeschooling now. They're finishing off high school homeschooling, and it's all technology driven. They literally accomplish all the same stuff, and it takes them 3 to 5 hours ish. Yeah, 3 to 5 hours. That's their school day.
I assume it's safer too.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So I mean, like, they're old enough now where they can take care of themselves. I mean, it's their high school age, right? So they're at home by themselves. It's not a big deal. You know, they do all their education online, and it's a fraction of the cost. Great education. So there's, you know, where one size fits all kind of thing. I'm like, to me, welcome to the modern era. We're literally teaching a 400-year-old means of educating our kids. It hasn't changed, like, very little. It's really not very different. If you look at when you taught high school and you go back 400 years ago, it's basically rote memorization. That's the methodology for teaching. It hasn't changed a lot in 400 years. Khan Academy, have you guys heard of this Khan Academy?
We use it.
It's amazing, right?
It's awesome.
This is a guy that was at MIT.
I heard the NPR interview.
An MIT guy. He's got like 3 PhDs.
Yeah,
it's pretty crazy. But he had a nephew that was like sucking at math, and so the nephew reaches out, hey, you know, MIT uncle, you know, help me out. And they live like 3 hours apart, and he's like, well, you know, it's not really practical for me to drive back and forth, so I'll just record these lessons and I'll throw them up on YouTube, and you can, you know, watch them. If you need help, then, you know, reach out to me and we'll take it from there. So he starts doing it, and he's killing it. Like, his grades massively improve and stuff. Well, next thing you know, that guy, he's got like friends who also are sucking, you know, and now they come, right? And he has like a whole group of people that are like studying these videos, and they have their little like group hanging out, and, you know, they're all getting better at math. And so now the con dude is like, man, well, he's got a group. I will, you know, condescend from my MIT ivory tower to come down, and I will drive. You have a group of people. I'll come out there, and they're like, no, it's cool. We got it. They actually preferred the video. And after they were studying it, they learned that the social aspect of it was, in a classroom setting, for a student to admit he doesn't understand, he has to overcome his peer pressure of raising his hand and saying, I don't get this, right? Whereas with the video, you fast forward, rewind, move, whatever, there's nobody judging, right? I totally get this section. I'm just going to skip ahead, right?
And that should theoretically help with budget problems, right? Because it's digital medium. You have one video that you record. You don't have to make a million textbooks.
Right.
You know what I mean? And you don't even need as many teachers theoretically, because you can go back and rewatch it. I know, like, some friends of mine do the English abroad. They teach like in Korea, Japan, English. But a lot of times, even when they're here in the States and they host it, they'll have a classroom. They'll be teaching to multiple different classrooms at the same time over like Skype or whatever it is, right? And they could have like 30 different classrooms that they're teaching with one recording, with one teacher.
And it's just teacher guided.
Right.
Right? So, you know, digitally you have somebody raising your hand, so to speak, to say I need help. right? Well,
Like a instant message
right,
box. Or whatever it
exactly,
is, right?
exactly. And so now, you know, you can be teaching 100 people, and you get, you know, a person raising their hand every so often, and you're specifically addressing that individual in that moment for where they're at in their need. But even at private school, for example, you know, it was far improved for me over a public school situation with our kids, and they did very well. But you're still teaching to the lowest common denominator, and we had issues with my son where he was accelerated in a couple different settings, and he would get in trouble for working ahead, right? They literally held him back to the lesson at hand because they didn't want him getting outside of what was being taught, because then the teacher would have to, you know, be dealing with multiple, where's everybody at, right? And I get that from a you know, how do you deal with it, manage it standpoint, but that's an issue, right? And this to me is a solution, right? If everybody's working at their own pace, like all my kids basically, they have a school year that they have to finish within. But inside that school year, they can work ahead, they can do all kind of stuff. They can work at whatever the pace they want, as long as they finish in the school year.
12 months.
Right? Yeah, 12 months. So I mean they've got 12 months to get their stuff done. And it takes them 3 to 5 hours to do the same schoolwork that our kids are spending an entire day there. So if the parents aren't able to be home, right, and it's a situation there, fine, we can still have a classroom setting. You have a teacher guided or a teacher assisted kind of a setting, but now you could have 100 students in a room, right? Because it's not dependent on me addressing each individual student and the lowest common denominator from a teaching standpoint. It's just teacher assisted education, and they have their lesson video format, that sort of thing. And now, you know, Johnny's behind, whatever, I can go deal with him one-on-one. To me, that's a pretty viable option. It's more efficient, it's more cost effective. Let's embrace what we do have of technology and implement that, and let's go outside on occasion. I think for me, that's a big takeaway.
I go back and watch that video about the Japanese school, man. It's just interesting because they built this massive outdoor complex. They pretty much let the kids go all day. That's what they do. It's like kindergarten and first grade. And it's like, yeah, just run. You know, there's a small lesson plan they do, but the kids get so much more exercise. They develop social interaction, and they actually preach like that. They have like these trees that like grow up through the facility or whatever it's called, with like nets. So there's like a danger aspect, and they say that like kids.
Oh, wow.
They say that kids
Woohoo.
approach that with like a appreciation. Like they're not going to hurt themselves, but they're going to figure it out, you know. And I guess maybe you should allow your kids to, you know, to fail. You should allow your kids to scratch their knee or hurt themselves on occasion in moderation, because it teaches them something, right?
Well, here's something based on what Joe has said and what you have said. You've talked about an awesome Japanese school where all the kids are together, they socialize, they go outside, which is awesome. Joe's talked about homeschool, so obviously you're home, you're isolated, you by yourself, but 3 to 5 hours, you knock it out. How do we embrace both? Because the 1 year that I tried, not a homeschool project, but we did a college prep. So 3 days a week, my oldest was by herself 1 year. We had overcrowding and constant redivision where we lived. And she needed to get ahead. She was ahead on a couple of subjects, and she stayed ahead. So how do we how do we embrace both the outside and socialization and homeschool? And also make use of cheaper education and vouchers.
Well, earlier we were talking about the community building exercise, where I forget what was the minister's name, or
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I feel like that is something that's definitely lacking. I live in the suburbs. I tried to return a missing dog to one of my neighbors, and they wouldn't even come to the door to get it because they were so afraid of their neighbors. They had the cameras on the doors and everything, you know what I mean? And it's just, the community's different. When I was a kid, and y'all might remember, we used to all play. We all played in this cul-de-sac together.
Yeah.
Parents let us come in. They would give, oh, you want some Kool-Aid or whatever snacks.
You had to stay outside all day.
You had to stay outside all day. And
Oh yeah.
I think that you can do the homeschooling,
Curfew was
but
when the street light
but
came
social
on.
interaction is important, and you have to have a neighborhood, you have to have a community to have social interaction, and that's should be pretty much free, you know, or at least available in the community centers that are free, like churches or.
Yeah. Well, this is one of those topics where there's a lot to talk about. We've hit our hour time here. We're a little bit over. We're going to be going live on Instagram afterwards, and that's always just like a behind the scenes for fun thing. We throw it on in the conference room. We're going to keep, sipping on some wine, and guests are welcome to hang out as long as they want in the conference room. We keep shooting the bull. So, I'm still like, there's some stuff I'm interested in on this that I'm curious and like want to keep talking about. But you guys chime in with your thoughts. I always come back to the comment feed tomorrow, and I'll be going through all of the comments and continuing the dialogue on the comment feed. So share your thoughts, be a part of that, absolutely. I want to give a shout out to all of our sponsors on the show. It's been scrolling in the comment feed, but make sure you support the sponsors because they're a big part of keeping the show going. And I love those guys, so it's a big plus for the show. Right now, this is a project. What is it? I just went brain dead when I have to say it. It's a project of love. I don't know how to say it. What I'm trying to get at.
Labor of love.
Labor of love. Thank you. That was the phrase. Labor of love. Right now, this is a labor of love. I sure ain't getting rich off this, I can tell you. A lot of work goes into the show. If you want to be a part of the show, you want to be on the show, message the page, let us know. We'll get you booked for being on the show. We're booked into May right now. If you want to be a sponsor of the show, let me know. We're always looking for sponsors. That's a very select audience, so we look carefully at that. Today's wine, we've been drinking a Colinas Blancas Malbec from Mendoza, Argentina. That's what we've been sipping on today. So we're going to get to the part of the show here where we're going to rate it. We're going to give it a grape.
What's the rating system, 1 to 10?
1 to 5.
1 to 5?
Yeah, 1 to 5 grapes. All right. There you go. And don't let any of the other guests bias you. Give us your honest rating on the wine.
So it's 1 the lowest?
1 is the lowest, 5 is the best. Yes, sir. Sorry, Nichole?
Okay, do I have to explain why I voted the way I voted, or can I just, this is what I thought?
Say as much as you want to say.
Okay, for this wine, considering I'm not normally a Malbec drinker, my husband will be quite amazed that I sat and continued to drink on it. I rate it a 4.
All right, very good, very
I thought
good.
it was pretty good.
I'm the negative guy here, so I'm going to rate it a 2. But
Totally okay.
It's a great 2.
It's a great 2. It's a great 2.
Oh gosh, my husband, the wine snob, would probably be 1 or 2 then if you're.
I will tell you, I am a fan of Malbecs, and I am a fan of Mendoza Malbec specifically, which kind of makes it more difficult because, like, one of my all-time favorite reds is a Malbec from Mendoza, Argentina, and man, it just knocked it out of the park. So kind of like it set a bar that is kind of difficult, but I definitely like it. I'm still a fan.
You want to pause your thought because my computer just decided to update itself.
What?
Forcibly?
Yeah, like forcibly just updated itself. It just went black screened on me. But I can totally pick up the stream like right where you left off. But I am like in the middle of an update right now. That just happened.
Wow, there's a first. Glad that didn't happen like in the middle of the show.
Middle of it, yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well,
So you just want to...
That
Yeah,
happened
just
to me
Just like
during.
you can literally pause yourself.
well,
and I
we're
will-
still live on YouTube, right?
Yeah, you are.
True.
All right, so we'll finish. We'll just knock this out, huh?
What did you rate it?
She rated a 4.
That's
4, 2,
hilarious.
4. 4, 2, 4. Yeah, 4. I'm giving it a 4. I still definitely enjoyed it. It's got some interesting flavors. I can definitely taste the cedar. I'm not like a huge fan of the cedar. It's got more of that angle for me, but it was good. I enjoyed it.
Pretty high acids.
Yeah. I'm gonna give it a 3. I think it's been down the middle. I'd drink it again. I think it's a good kind of table wine if you were having maybe barbecue or some kind of meat, dark meat, beef.
I was thinking the same thing. It would be really good with a steak.
And there is like a plum note to it,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yeah.
it's not the best. I like a little bit more spice, I think, to my Malbec and all that stuff.
Yeah, and I think even in the description, it was kind of indicating that it was a little more on the mellow side as far as the spice goes.
So yeah, I give it a 3.
All right, I'm more of a Pinot guy myself, but this is a good Malbec, so I'm gonna go ahead and give it a 4.
All right.
Yeah, that's the beautiful thing about wine. It's like music. It's like art. You know, one person's 5 is another person's 1. You know, so and there is no right or wrong in that. You drink what you enjoy. That's really all it boils down to. So,
What did the average come down to?
huh?
What was the average rating?
I don't know, Ash. We had a 4, a 2, a 4, a 3, a 4. So
3.5.
12,
Yeah, 3.5.
15,
Yeah, I think 3.5.
17 divided by 5. 3.
She's in the middle of math.
3.425.
It's a 3.2 something.
What is my calculator?
17 divided by 5, what is that? 2 and a 0 would be 5. 4. No, it's a 3.4.
Yeah. I
3.4.
agree with that.
Yeah, that's not too bad. It's a very, I think it's a fair rating. That's you know, it's a kind of a fun thing with 5 people from all different walks of life, so to speak. We normally get I feel a pretty accurate rendering of the wine.
Have you had a 5 on here yet?
We've only had a couple, but we have, yeah. And I will tell you that I lean more to the reds, but I like a good white wine as well. This wine club has consistently just knocked out of the park with the whites. Like, the worst white that we've ever had was like a 3.7, like group rating. The first all 5 that we had was a Chardonnay from California, actually.
Oh, wow.
Napa Valley?
It was a Sonoma, and it was Pacific Coast Highway 1. And it's not even expensive. Like, I Googled it, looked it up, $14 a bottle. It was phenomenal. It was so good. And then we had an Italian, the name is crazy. It's like Orgoglio or something like that. I'm trying to
Googlio.
Orgoglio.
Alienico?
Huh?
Alienico?
No, it was an O. It was definitely an O. Yeah, I remember, and that was an all 5, and it was amazingly
White
good.
label with the red banner? Or sorry, blue banner?
White label.
I think I've seen that before. Yeah.
Orgoglio. So I'm almost certain.
It's a weird
that's the
name,
nose.
so
Yeah,
to speak,
yeah. But we the 5s that we had a Miravas Malbec from Argentina, and that was an all 5, and then we had the Chardonnay, and we had another Chardonnay that were all 5s. So, yeah, you know, overall, pretty accurate, I think. So, to the conference room. It's kind of weird where, you know, it's such a weird, like, anticlimactic thing in here. I'm like, I just feel kind of awkward right now.
On YouTube.
Yeah, it's still live on YouTube, right? So, the YouTubers. Hey, YouTubers!
We can take the video and put it on Facebook.
Yeah, we're wrapping up. We're going to take a picture.
Oh.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yep. So,
Well.
yep, go ahead, Ian. See you guys. We're out. We're going live on Instagram,
Thanks
so hop over
for
there.
chiming in today.
Yeah.